Hi, Mark Bossert, top local lead generation. We're talking with award-winning, 12 times voted best in Vancouver by his customers, different magazines, publications in Vancouver, Mr. Bernie Pawlik of Pawlik Automotive. How you doing today, Bernie?
Excellent. And you?
I'm good. So we're doing an early morning one
Yes.
today, and we're going to talk about Land Rovers and Range Rovers. Pretty fancy vehicles. Seem to be a lot of them, a lot more of them around these days. Do you see a lot of them in your shop?
Yeah, we do. We work on plenty of Land Rover vehicles. They're really nice vehicles, generally very tough and luxurious for sure, but they are somewhat problematic, which is kind of good for us.
So problematic? Doesn't spending a lot of money on a high-end vehicle ensure a trouble-free ride?
Definitely not. It's kind of interesting. I think at least with European cars, there seems to be a correlation between how much you spend on the car and how much service you have to do. You'd think to yourself, well, if you buy a good quality car, you'd have less problems, but it seems to be the exact opposite. And in all fairness, I mean, a complex vehicle, luxury car has a lot more things that can go wrong, but it seems like they don't make them quite as well in some ways, especially compared to the Japanese luxury cars like Lexus and Infinitis. They seem to be a little more trouble-free.
So what sort of issues do you see with Land Rover and Range Rover?
Well, there's lots of stuff, and I'll say they seem to be getting better, with each passing year. Going back, say, into the mid to late 90s, there was quite a few engine problems. With their V8 engines, they have cylinder liners that would sometimes fail. Not a lot, but when they do, you'd have to replace the whole engine. They're not something that can be readily machined like a lot of standard kind of V8 engines could be. Oil leaks from valve cover gaskets and a number of different spots are common. In the early 2000s, some of the Range Rovers had a BMW V8 engine, which you'd think would be great, but they're actually not the best V8 engine. There's a lot of problems with them. I mean, they're good when they're younger, but as they get older, they start getting oil leaks and coolant leaks, and they're pretty expensive to fix. So they've got away from all that. It seems like the engines these days are pretty good in the Land Rover and Range Rover cars, or trucks, I should say.
So what kind of other issues do they have?
Well, most Land Rovers and all Range Rovers certainly use air suspension, which is great because you can adjust the height of the vehicle for different road conditions, or if you're going down the highway, the vehicle will kind of drop down for more stability. It's a great feature, but a lot of things do go wrong with air suspension. There's sensors on each corner of the car. There's an airbag, which is basically a giant air spring on each corner, and eventually those bags will leak. It takes quite a few years, but they do leak. Probably the biggest problem, the compressors that use an air compressor to fill the airbags. And over time, the compressors will fail for various reasons. But one of them, one model of Range Rover, they actually put the air compressor in the trunk underneath the spare tire, which is a great spot for it. Other models, they put the air compressor outside of the vehicle, underneath the vehicle, inside a somewhat weatherproof box. But of course, it's not fully weatherproof. Water gets in eventually and wears it out. And it's a stupid place to put it because this is basically an off-road type of vehicle, which is designed to go off-road, and that's the last place you want to put an electronic device. Anyways, that's what they've done, and you have to deal with it.
So are these good off-road vehicles?
They certainly are. They're built very tough. They've got solid frames. Large drivetrain components. The one exception is the Freelander or the LR2, which is a replacement of the Freelander. These are more car-like models, but the main like LR3, LR4 Land Rovers and the Range Rovers, they're definitely big, tough truck-type vehicles. Land Rover has that reputation for being an off-road vehicle. You see them, driving through the Serengeti, and they're well-deserved reputation. You can pretty well take a lot of those older ones pretty much anywhere. They're simpler vehicles. But with a lot of these more modern ones, I mean, most people, they never get off-road. They're just a nice little luxury ride around town or up to Whistler for the weekend. But the great thing about it is if you get tired of the nightlife in Whistler or sitting around your hotel room, you can always go off on some rough logging road and go exploring, and you'll get there and back most likely. The only thing I'm worried about is scratching the paint and maybe wrecking the nice low-profile tires and wheels. You know, we've got one client who's got an LR3. He goes out hunting with his buddies. You know, it's got the air suspension and everything, so you can adjust the height, ride, and everything. He goes out, you know, quite frequently, uses it for what it's meant for, drives it around daily, and it's a tough truck. It works really well.
So you mentioned something about the Land Rover Freelander.
I did, and this is the only vehicle we worked on in our shop in years that I can say is a piece of junk. It's a horribly built vehicle, and it's really actually the only vehicle I can think about, other than maybe like an older Hyundai or a Lada, you know, that I can say is a piece of junk. The engines in the Freelander, it's at least the ones sold in North America, they use a strangely designed V8 engine. And what happens with this engine, it uses cylinder liners that are held in place with some sort of strange adhesive or glue. And eventually, after not too long, maybe 5 years, the liner fails, or the glue fails, and the cylinder liner starts flopping around. That causes the head gasket leak. And the only way you can fix it is to replace the engine with an engine from Land Rover. There's nobody who can rebuild it, nobody who can fix it. It's just, and these engines rebuilt from Land Rover may well be brand new engines. The problem is so bad, apparently, that Land Rover was actually buying the vehicles back from customers and actually just sending the vehicle off to get crushed. I mean, I just find that just appalling when I think about it. You know, to me, any vehicle built should last for 20 years if you take at least 20 years if you take good care of it, and if you choose to keep it that long. But you know, the fact that some of these vehicles you wouldn't even get 100,000 kilometers out of before sending it to the scrapper is horrible. Apparently, in Europe, they sell the Freelander with a diesel engine, which is really reliable. So it's just really the engine offering that they put in it that makes it a crappy vehicle around here. They replaced the Freelander with an LR2, which is a much nicer vehicle, and it uses a Ford/Volvo drivetrain. But interestingly enough, we had one a little while ago where we did a service where both the front and rear differential pinion bearings were worn out, made a horrible noise when you're driving down the road. The vehicle didn't even have 80,000 kilometers on it, and apparently the rear pinion bearing failure is very common on these. So I don't know, they're not built all that well either. Yeah, that's what all I can say about those. They're not great vehicles.
So that's a pretty scathing review. You normally don't say that kind of stuff about bad things about vehicles.
Really, I don't. You know, I think almost any vehicle you can buy nowadays, and even within the last 10 years, is a good vehicle. But the Freelander, it really is a piece of crap. And I find it's frustrating being in a business where we're trying to fix vehicles and keep them going and save people money, and yet it feels like with a Freelander, no matter what you do, it's a waste of time because it's just a ticking time bomb. So it's not really worth our efforts to even work on one.
So here we go to the dealer kind of viewpoint, perhaps. These are Land Rover and Range Rover especially are really fancy, high-end vehicles, very expensive. Aren't they best serviced, especially at the dealer?
Well, they definitely are fancy and sophisticated vehicles. However, any shop with proper equipment and skilled technicians can work on them. We've invested a lot in equipment to work on Land Rovers and Range Rovers. We've got the right diagnostic equipment and the service equipment to do it. Dealers generally do a good job. But I was recently shocked. We had a client who had a 2-year-old Range Rover, 2012, 20,000 kilometers, was quoted $1,200 for service from the dealer. We did the same service, $450, taxes included, everything out the door. And I really can't figure out what they could have possibly done for $1,200 on a 2-year-old, 20,000 kilometer vehicle. So, with dealers with European cars, we often see people with huge quotes for service, and I'm not sure what they're getting. It's not the case with all of them, but some of them it's crazy. I don't quite understand. So I think there's the opportunity for us to save, especially people with high-end luxury cars, a lot of money on their service.
So it sounds like you can save people a lot of money on service.
Yeah, it seemed yeah, absolutely. In many cases, we seem to find that. So.
Any final thoughts on Land Rover and Range Rover?
Yeah, I mean, overall they're great vehicles, but and they cost a fair bit of money to buy in the first place. But and you can expect, because it's a luxury vehicle, you're going to spend more on maintenance and repairs. They're more complex. There's more, they're more complex built. There's more parts to break, so that's going to cost more money. A lot of times they're a bit exclusive, so you're stuck with dealer for parts. And then the other area with Land Rovers that can make them kind of expensive is somewhere in their servicing. And I'll just leave you with a final example. transmission service on an LR3, for instance. Normally we take the pan off, clean it, put a new gasket and filter in, and flush it with a machine. The Land Rovers, they use synthetic fluid, which is not uncommon. It's quite a bit more expensive, but lots of cars use synthetic fluid. But with the LR3, the transmission pan is a complete assembly with a pan, a gasket, and a filter. It's several $100s for the part. And then labor-wise to get it off, it was never really designed to be removed easily. So it's, again, another couple $100 labor in addition. So it makes for a very expensive transmission service. Still worthwhile doing every 100,000 kilometers to keep the transmission alive, but that's just an example of what you do end up paying sometimes to service these vehicles. But I mean, overall, great vehicles. Few more problems than some, but we can service them and we love working on them.
Awesome. Thanks. So we've been talking Land Rovers and Range Rovers with award-winning Best in Vancouver for Auto Service, Mr. Bernie Pawlik of Pawlik Automotive. You can reach them at pawlikautomotive.com. Fantastic website with tons of information. Or give them a call, 604-327-7112. Thanks, Bernie.
Thanks, Mark. We'll talk again soon.
You bet.
Bye.